My name is Meredith Chilton and I'm an independent ceramic historian. But for 20 years I was the curator at the Gardiner Museum, and it was my great privilege to work with truly an outstanding collection. And one of the great acquisitions that we were able to make while I was at the museum was this Chelsea Rabbit Tureen. He is extremely appealing to everyone. As you can see, he's sitting in a bunch of lettuces, having a jolly good munch. And if you look very closely, you can even catch a little snail resting on one of the leaves. Well, this rabbit was made at the Chelsea porcelain factory, which was the very most important of all the English porcelain factories in the 18th century. We know it was made between 1752 and 1756 because it has a little tiny red anchor mark which appears on the lid, and this mark was used during that period. It's also curious because both in 1755 and in 1756, the Chelsea factory had auctions which were published. And in both of those auctions, there was listed a Rabbit Tureen big as life, which must be this Rabbit Tureen and the others that were made. Now, the other thing that appears as a mark on this tureen is at number 20. And of the 8 surviving Rabbit Tureens, one of them has a mark that is number 25. So we know at least 25 were made. But as I said, only 8 still survive. So we're really fortunate to have this one here. The red anchor period at Chelsea is considered to be perhaps the height of Chelsea artistry. And I think you can see that easily with this rabbit. Just look how naturally it's been decorated. All the little brush strokes of each hair, the gentle use of the brown and the purple color, the beautiful painting of its face, the big eyes, and of course these delightful leaves. These colors are typical of this period, particularly the browns and the purples and this turquoise green. And the delicacy of the painting is also very indicative of really the very height of artistry at Chelsea at this period. Soup was very popular in the 18th century. It comprised part of the first course at the meal, and it was so popular that in many of the contemporary recipe books, there were literally tens of recipes for soup. Massielot has 96 recipes for soup in his cookbook, including soup which contains rabbit, but also perhaps soup for lettuce, which also would have been quite appropriate, I think, for the Rabbit Tureen. Even a pea soup, perhaps, who knows? There was a great whimsy in the middle of the 18th century for using naturalistic forms. You see it in faience tureens, but also in porcelain. And the Chelsea manufactory made this rabbit and also other naturalistic forms such as boar's heads. They made chickens, they made various birds and fish, and often decorative ornamental leaves as well. And originally this rabbit would have rested on a large stand or dish, which would have had leaves around it as well. One of the big questions facing us is whether in fact this tureen was really used. Of course you can pick up the lid by the ears. It has no other handles. But then when you look on the inside, you can see a complex molded form, which really looks quite fragile. Now, French porcelain tureens of this period always have silver liners, which were placed inside and into which the soup or the stew was poured. None survives for any of the Chelsea naturalistic tureens. It's possible that this could have had a liner, or it may have been used without, which may account for the fact that only 8 of these pieces survive. Or indeed, it may just have been used as a wonderful decorative element on the table itself. We were able to acquire this tureen thanks to the generosity of several people and a foundation, the Tekelot Foundation. But the people who were involved have a very particular story. Betty Ramsay, who was a great doyenne of English porcelain, put me in touch with Dr. Walter Bloom and his wife Erica, and also his sister, Carol Bloom Koffler, with the idea that perhaps they might be able to help us with the acquisition of this rabbit. It so happened that their mother, Adele Bloom, was a great collector of English porcelain, and we discovered to our delight that Mrs. Bloom had been inspired to collect her English porcelain collection after visiting an exhibition at the Montreal Museum of Art in 1950, which happened to include this very rabbit. So how appropriate it was for them to honor their mother with a special gift that enabled us to buy this rabbit.